My name's Josh Becknall. If I'm not a familiar face, it's because I'm usually up with the high school students or doing community group stuff. But as he said, this is Scott's first week of sabbatical. And so I get the opportunity to come up and close out our series in Hebrews. If you guys don't remember, Hebrews has been a pretty long series for us. It's been the Jesus is better than, and we've gone through all the different things. But I think this is the 9th week of this series, and so we've been digging into it for a while. And to give you a refresher of what the book of Hebrews is trying to do, we don't know who the author is, and it's either a message or it's a letter written to these people that we do know something about. And what we know about the people is that they are Christ followers at the time, but they've come upon some trouble, they've come upon persecution, they've come upon kind of struggle and issues, and they're at the place where they're thinking about going back to their old ways. They're thinking about quitting, they're thinking about giving up. And so what the writer of Hebrews is trying to do is to give this very clear case to say, if you lay out all of the possible options of how you can live your life, the best possible option you have is following Christ. Now let me show you why. And Scott went into that, and he talked about how it's better than having the priest, it's better than sacrifices, it's better than quitting, and all these different things, and we've looked at that over the 9 weeks. But to me, what the writer is trying to do is give you that aha moment where you go, oh, I see. The light bulb goes off, and you go, wow, this is actually the best possible way of doing life. And to me, kind of a dorky example that I thought up is back when I think this was like middle school or high school. I grew up at a time, I'm going to date myself a little bit right now. I grew up at a time where there was technology, but technology was not awesome yet. It didn't think for you yet, so there was still some work that had to go into it. And I remember getting an email from someone, and in the email was the URL to a website. And I'm talking like the full URL, and it wasn't highlighted, it wasn't linked, it didn't have anything like that. And so I wanted to get to that website, and what I had to do, some of you guys know what I'm talking about, is I had to open up another tab and then copy every single character that makes no sense of why they're put together, and it's like %, greater than alligator mouth thing, / / 97QR, and you're like, come on. And you know if you get one wrong, you're going to the wrong place and you got to redo the whole thing. And I remember sitting there trying to type it in and just the tedious process. And then someone sitting next to me goes, hey, did you know you could do this? And they highlight it. Yeah, you know where I'm going. And they copy it and they paste it. Mind-blowing. Some of you guys are like, wow, I didn't realize you were that old. Or that technologically terrible. But anyways, I'm at this moment and I go, oh my goodness. I had no idea. This whole time I'd been typing in character for 48 characters long, hoping I got it all right, rolling the dice going, maybe it's the right page. And all of a sudden they highlight it, click it, paste it, and it's done. And I'm like, what? That was awesome. And clearly, that was the better option. And to me, that's what the writer of Hebrews is trying to do in this book, is to say, look at all the different ways of doing your life, and I'm going to convince you through this book. I'm going to write to you all the different ways to prove to you unequivocally that following Christ is the best possible way to live your life. There is no better option. And so that's the point of Hebrews. And when Scott told me he was going to be gone, and I was taking this last week of it, I realized I was taking Hebrews 13, which is the conclusion of the book. It's the last chapter of the book. And as I started to study it, at first there was kind of this part of me that was going, oh no, what am I going to do with this? Because if you read through the whole chapter, it kind of bounces around from topic to topic to topic, but it doesn't really dive into any one major point. And so I was a little bit concerned, but then as I started studying it, I actually got to the place where I am now, where I'm really excited I get to talk to you guys about this message. And the reason why is this is something that's been on my heart for a long time, and as I connected the dots, I realized, man, Lord, you knew what you were doing here, because this has lived inside of me for years now. And there's this foundational element that I think is so key to our Christian lives and following God, that if we don't have this right, it tends to mess up everything else. And this is that foundational piece that is so key and so important. And I get the opportunity to close it this morning, and I think with the best part of Hebrews. So let's dive into that this morning. Hebrews chapter 13, verses 5 to 6, it says this: "Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have, because God has said, 'Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.' So we say with confidence, 'The Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me, or what can man do to me?'" And as we start into this, the thing that I want to make sure we don't get caught up in is immediately it says, "Keep your lives free from the love of money." And I think for most of us, because we live in the Bay Area, some of us have money, some of us don't feel like we have as much money, but wherever we are on the spectrum, there's still this part of us that when it says, "Keep your life free from the love of money," we go, ooh. Because whether we are or not, simply by where we live, everyone just assumes, oh, you're rich. Where are you from, the Bay Area? Loaded. It's an automatic assumption, and I get it because you rent in a condo that's one bedroom, and it's like, oh, it's $3,000 a month. But because of that, when we hear money, I think there's this trigger inside of us that kind of makes us cringe a little bit and go, ooh, there's a perception that comes with that, and I'm a part of it. But the good news for us this morning is, as I dug into this and looked at some of the commentaries, this idea of love of money is not necessarily specific to just money. It's talking about money, but it's not really, the root issue is not money. The root issue is if you're really focusing on God and you're in the right place, your perspective is right, then things will be of what is eternal. It'll be what is significant to God. It'll be what matters forever. And it won't be on the temporary things of life just here and now. And money falls into the category of the temporary things of life here and now. And so what the writer of this is trying to do isn't necessarily just blast on money. It's to say, if your heart is in the wrong place, that is what's significant. That's what matters. And then as it continues on, I think there's another thing we can get caught up in that we need to correct. And it says, be content with what you have. And if you're like me, when I hear be content with what you have, I automatically think about stuff. For me, it's, am I content with the amount of land that's attached to the property where I live? Am I content with the house that I live in? Am I content with the car that I drive? Am I content with the clothes that I wear? Am I content with the food that's on the plate in front of me? And we take it down to even small little things, like some of you are here this morning looking at your coffee cup thinking, am I content with this, or do I need a Yeti? And there's all these different things, and no offense to you people with a Yeti, don't worry about it, that's not the point. But to say, a lot of times when we hear the word content, we think along the lines of stuff, things, and financial affluence. And again, that's not what this passage is talking about. And to me, I'm glad it's not all that it's talking about, I should say. And to me, I'm glad that's not all that it's talking about, because as I was thinking about this, I think we have what I would consider a blessing and a curse being in the Bay Area. For me, I was born and raised in the Bay Area. I've grown up in Morgan Hill, spent most of my life there, and what I've been able to learn, and I think most of us are in the same boat, we've either lived this or we've seen firsthand that stuff, things, and financial affluence is not necessarily directly connected to being content. You can have a lot of money and you can have a lot of stuff and still not be very satisfied with where your life is at. To me, I got a great illustration of this 2 weekends ago. We took all the high school kids. As I said, I'm the high school pastor. We took the graduating 8th graders out to the lake to go tubing and wakeboarding and hanging out, kind of to promote our houseboats event and just to hang out and have a fun time. Now, if you don't know much about the boating world, it is ridiculous how much a personal watercraft can now cost you. I'm not talking about a yacht or like a cruise ship or anything like that, just a boat made for tubing, wakeboarding, wake surfing, hanging out with your family. Some of those boats now cost in the neighborhood of $250,000. It's crazy. And because we live in the Bay Area, some of those boats that were in that area were out on the lake with us. And we came back into the dock in a boat that does not fall in that category. And as the kids got off, we were watching as a guy driving a boat had his family and his kids in there, and then his wife had backed the trailer down, or backed the boat trailer down so they could leave the lake. And they had a very, very nice boat and a very nice car. And as he was pulling onto the boat, or onto the trailer, all of a sudden, what seemed like from the middle of nowhere, he pops up and he's like, "Put the trailer further in the water." And she instantly goes, "It's farther than it was when I dropped you off. Drive the boat." And I was like, wow, that got real quick. And the kids in the boat are like, And it was a great reminder that no matter how awesome your stuff is, you maybe are not always going to be content because of it. I know for me growing up, I had some friends that were very well off, and a good friend's older brother, shortly after he turned 16, was given a brand new Ferrari as his first car. Yeah, nice, right? He went out shortly after, crashed that Ferrari, and in response to that, his parents didn't even just fix the first Ferrari and give it back to him. They got rid of that one and bought him another Ferrari. And this was right after he turned 16. And that wasn't that uncommon for some of the friends that I had growing up, for families to be like that, but I got to live with those families enough. I got to go on vacation with them. I got to see things, and I got to understand stuff, money, and things doesn't necessarily have a correlation to being content. You can have all the stuff in the world and still not be satisfied with where you're at. So as we look at this passage where it says, be content with what you have, then what type of contentment are we talking about? What area are we talking about being content in? And the answer is this. Are you content with who you are? Are you content with your lot in life? Are you content with the hand that you've been dealt? Are you content with the relationships, with the actual things that are significant? If you think about those 5 wheels that define life of relational, emotional, spiritual, work, all those things, are you content there? And that's what this passage is driving at, and that's the question that we're asking this morning. And my struggle, or the issue that I see, is I think being in the Bay Area, a lot of us answer that question with no. A lot of us feel like we're on the other side more so, where we go, you know what I feel like? I feel like I get up every single morning, I go to work, and it's a grind, and I try as hard as I can, and I push, and I strive, and I try, and I push, and when I finally come up for a breath, I feel like I've been running on a treadmill, and I've gone nowhere. I feel like I've sacrificed relationship, family, barbecues, kids' games, all these different things, and I've pushed, and I've pushed, and I've pushed, and somehow I've gone 2 steps backwards. Or maybe worst of all, some of you feel like you've pushed and you've strived and you got to where you wanted to go. You took the advancement steps you wanted to take, and when you got there, you realized it wasn't fulfilling. You arrived at what you wanted and you realized, I'm still not satisfied. And maybe this is a lot worse. Maybe this lives in you more, and it's something along the lines of, when I got married, I thought my spouse was going to do this, this, and this, and I thought I was going to do this, this, and this, and I thought our relationship was going to look like this. And you can describe that in a lot of different ways, but you cannot say where I am right now is content with what I have. Maybe it's how you feel as a parent, in your role as mom or dad, and the way that you've raised your kids, or maybe in the way that your kids are turning out. You go, I had all these expectations, I had all these thoughts, I had all these desires, but somehow I am not satisfied with where it's at. Maybe you are the son or daughter, no matter what your age, where you're going, I've tried to do everything I can do to get the approval of my mom or dad. I've strived for that. I've pushed for that. I've changed my ways. I've done all that I feel like I can do, and I still don't feel like I'm satisfied and content with where I am. And I think most of us know that feeling of being in a place where you go, I'm striving, I'm pushing, I'm trying, and the results are not where I want them to be. And I think we can agree being content on that level and in those areas is incredibly significant. So it leads us to the point this morning of, okay, then what do I do about it? And to me, I think we find a great answer from Paul in Philippians 4:11-12 when it says this: I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Let me read that again. For I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Some of your translations might say, I can do all this through Christ who strengthens me. But the whole point is we're taking this from Paul. To give you a refresher on Paul, Paul has probably been to some of the highest highs and lowest lows. Paul has been beat to the point that people just left him for dead and said, okay, he's probably done and gone, so we can leave now. He's been thrown in prison. He's been abandoned by his friends. He's had everyone that he thought was going with him and following him and supporting him give up, turn away, and walk out. And he's had moments of great glory of leading things and being a part of things where he probably was taken to highs that most of us don't even understand. And he's gone through this range of emotion. He says, I've had tons and I've had almost nothing. And in all of this, I've learned the secret to be content in any and every situation. And as we ask the question, how do we learn to be content in any and every situation? And as we ask the question, as Hebrews presents to us, why is it that following God is the best possible option for our lives? The answer is right here at the end where he says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. The answer to contentment, the answer why things are so great is because who God is. It's not because of our stuff, our things, and how we do things. It's because who God is to us. And Hebrews takes it a step farther. It says this: be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you and never will I forsake you. Why is giving your life to Christ and following him our best possible option? How do I be content in this life? The answer is this: because the creator of the universe, who made you, who knows you better than you could ever know yourself, who knows all the circumstances you're in, who has a plan for your life, decides to say, through the sacrifice of my son, if you've chosen to accept that, then through nothing else you've done, through no merit of your own, through nothing else, I've chosen, because of who I am, to take a stance to say, you are my child. And I love you, and I will never leave you, and I will never forsake you. Why is life with God the best possible option? Because the creator of the universe says, child, you're mine. I love you, and never will I leave you, and never will I forsake you. I will never abandon you. I will never make you do this alone. And as we look at Paul, or we look at our situations to go, whether I'm high or whether I'm low, whether I have a lot or whether I have a little, what matters is that the God who created me says, I love you, and I'm never leaving you. As I thought about this, I thought of a story that I think illustrates this from my life. And from some of you guys, you probably don't know, I was able to play baseball in college. And if you don't know much about that, that means you spend pretty much most of your life playing baseball every day with a certain group of people. And as I spent every day with this group of people, there was one of the guys on the team that he and I really developed a relationship, and he became my best friend on the team. And in our second year of playing together, I got a phone call from another guy on the team. And he said, hey, did you hear about what happened to PJ? And that was my best friend from the team. And he goes, he got killed in a drunk driving accident. And as I got that call, I remember just the sadness and the hurt and the struggle that came with it. The brokenness and just the that lived inside of me. And I remember going to his memorial service and feeling so empty and so much hurt and so much struggle, and to be honest with you guys, having so much regret because I was a believer, and as far as I know, he never was, and I didn't do what I feel like I should have done. I didn't have the conversations I felt like I should have had. I didn't take the opportunities I look back and go, I wish I would have taken. And feeling so empty and so lost at that memorial service. And I remember leaving the service, and a group of us from the team decided that we were going to go out to the baseball field where we played. And we got out to the field, and it was just a handful of us. And as we got there, it started to rain. And I'm not talking that it started to drizzle. I'm talking it started to rain on us. It was dumping buckets. And I remember looking around at the other guys on the team. And without saying a single word, we kind of just non-verbally agreed, we're not going home yet. We're not done here. It's not time. We're just not going back. We're staying out here. And I remember walking over to third base where he played and getting to his spot, all dressed up in my nice clothes from the memorial service, and just hitting my knees. And I just broke. The imagery that comes to my mind is if you took a glass bottle and you held it high above concrete and you just dropped it, and you got that slow motion picture of the bottle just shattering into pieces. And that felt like what I did at that moment is I just broke and I just wept. And on my knees there at third base in the mud, I don't know, I can't even explain it, but somehow it just felt like the presence of God just wrapped around me. It felt like the arms of God just came around me and said, "Child, I've got you. Josh, I love you, and I'm never letting go. I will never leave you, and I will never forsake you." And for some of you guys in this moment, you've gone through things that are so much incredibly more difficult than things I've gone through. For some of you, I hear your stories and my heart breaks for the fact that you go through some of the things that you currently go through. But I look at that and I go, the point that Paul's getting at, the point that Hebrews is getting at, is it's not the height or the depth or the extent of the struggle, whether things are incredibly hard or whether things are easier and it's not that bad. The point that we're getting to, and the point of why Hebrews says following God is your best possible option, is because through no merit of our own, on nothing we've done to deserve it, simply based on the sacrifice of Christ's Son, because of who he chose to be and the stance he chose to take towards us, he looks at us not as the future Christian you're supposed to be, but as you are right here, right now. He looks at you and goes, "Child, I love you. I will never leave you, and I will never forsake you." Whether you understand what is happening in your life or whether you have no idea and it makes no sense to you and you cannot comprehend it, the point is this: God does, and he loves you, and he's never leaving you and never forsaking you. What is the great news of Hebrews that says following God is the best possible life? How do we choose to be content with the life we have? By realizing that the creator of the universe is madly in love with you. How can I drive a boat up and watch someone else in a super awesome boat pull up and think to myself, that's fine? Because if I'm thinking, well, the creator of the universe is smitten with me, I don't care what boat you have. And for the bigger things in life that really matter, when we focus on the fact to go, the creator of the universe gave his son for me because he loves me, it changes everything. It makes Hebrews so obvious, and to me, to be a little bit more vulnerable with you guys, it's the foundation that everything has to be built off. And the reason why this lives in me so much is you can see a picture of my family in the program. And I have two little daughters. who I love and care about more than I could ever bring myself to love and care about any of you. And when I was blessed with those two precious little girls, I spent time asking God, God, if I could ask one thing of you, what would I want more than anything else for my two precious little girls? And what I pray every single night when I have the incredible opportunity to cuddle up with them and hold them because they're still small enough to do that. What I pray for them is this. God, in the deepest recesses of who they are, with every fiber in their being, with every part of them, would you please let them know that you love them? That you are absolutely in love with them. That your love is greater than my love or any other love they will ever receive, and they are absolutely, eternally loved. And may their life be a response to that. May them living as Christians, may them following you, may all of that be simply based on your love for them first. And I don't think I'm standing up here this morning telling you guys anything new or giving you something you haven't heard. What I'm trying to do is remind us of what matters most. And my hope and my prayer for all of you in this room is that this would be what we come away with, remembering that the foundation of everything we have in Christ is His love for us. That the greatest part of Hebrews and how Paul figured it out and how those guys have it nailed, what matters more than anything else is who God chooses to be to us. Not who we are to Him, not a response, not how we live our life. What matters most and what is absolutely foundational is that the Creator of the universe has decided, because of the sacrifice of His Son, to choose to see you as you are now is precious. To delight over you with singing and say, child, I love you, I've got you. I will never leave you, and I will never forsake you. No matter how high, no matter how low, with a lot or with a little, none of that matters. What matters is, child, I'm in love with you, and I'm never, ever, ever going to abandon you. You're mine, and I've got you. And it's based on me. And as I close this out, I was reminded of a message I heard from a pastor one time that I think is a great, tangible way for us to end this. And he said, every single day as we go through life, we get the chance to either be a vulture or a hummingbird. And what does a vulture do? A vulture flies around in search of rotten, decaying, disgusting, gross things. And when it finds that rotten, decaying, gross, hard, disgusting things, it consumes it and it fills itself up with those things. And what's a hummingbird do? In the same way, it flies around and it searches, and when it finds a sweet, delicious, great nectar, it lands there and it fills itself up and it consumes itself with those things. And I think for us, there's more than enough options of the negative and the downside that we can consume. But if we're looking to be content, and if we actually want to know why Hebrews says following Christ is our best possible option, then we feed on and we remind ourselves and we dig into the fact that you and I have the greatest gift that anyone will ever be given, if you are a Christ follower in the room, to say the Creator of the universe, who knows you better than anyone ever could and who understands way more than you ever will understand, is madly in love with you. And his statement to you, which is taken from the Old Testament and brought forward to us in Hebrews, is, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you, because you're mine and it's based on me. So what we're going to do to close this, we're going to celebrate this and focus on this. And the band's going to play a song called Reckless Love. And this whole song just talks about how God pursues us and how God chooses to love us. And it's not about us and what we've done. It's who our God is and how he chooses to see us. So band, if you would take us away.